So last week's Torah portion, the Akedah, right? God tells Abraham to go up on the mountaintop and sacrifice his boy. So what does he do? He nudges Sarah, says, "Hey Sarah, I had this dream, right?" No. It says, so Abraham rose early in the morning. He gets up real early, saddles the donkey, does all these things, and gets his boy, and they go off, and we know how the story happens. And they get back, and the next significant thing that happens, Sarah's dead. Some people have supposed that the news of Yitzchak, this quality time with your father, what happened? What'd you guys get up to? Well, Mom, he tied me up, and then he put me on this altar, and he raised this knife high,
And then he started talking to somebody I couldn't see. Yeah, there you go. Right? So there's this idea that maybe this event killed her, right? And I was thinking to myself, these poor women, my brain, no, I'm not going to let that one out of the bag. So these poor women, you have Sarah, right? Abraham's wife, whose only son is being tied up on an altar, and all these other things. We have Moses, right? He's on his way back to Egypt with his wife in tow and his kids. And what happens on the way? Anybody remember? So the Lord meets him and is going to kill him. And so his wife goes and circumcises the boy and throws the foreskin at the feet. You are a husband of blood to me. Which is interesting to me that the word dam is in there. I'm just saying, the Hebrew word for blood is dam. And dam. Sorry. Anyway, so my brain, as it goes. So, being married to one of these characters seems an adventure. Yes? Yes. My wife has once asked that instead of bringing the idols into the house so I can set them on fire, I'd rather do that outside because we have smoke alarms. I'm all very enthusiastic when people give me some weird chalice or talisman or whatever the case may be. I'm like, oh boy, I get to do something in the Bible, and I'm going to go deal with this thing. And she's like, well, just do it outside, we don't need the smoke, we don't need the soot. And I think about the enthusiasm that we can get into sometimes, and the poor women that are just like, what are you doing? And, I was just reflecting on that a little bit today. As something that stood out to me. And there were a few other things that stood out to me. And I'm going somewhere eventually with this, but to start, anybody know the names and amount of Jacob's sons? Okay, there's 12, right? All right, anybody know names? Who we got? Dan. Asher, Simeon, Reuben, Manasseh, anybody else? Issachar, Naphtali, okay, Yehudah, right? Zebulun, Levi, Yosef, Benjamin. Yes, not the capital G, God. the lower G, Gad. Sorry. You capitalize proper nouns.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. So it is
Not in Hebrew.
but not in Hebrew. Also, yes, that's exactly where I was going to go. So he has 12 sons, and we have their names. Okay, and Isaac. What about him and his boys? What do we got? Okay, Esav and Yaakov, right? Jacob and Esau. Cool. And Avram, who we got? And
Oh.
And
TV had been cheap entertainment.
Wow. So we're always talking about Isaac and Ishmael, but nobody ever thinks about these other boys. Right? We never talk about them. We never talk about them. We don't discuss them. We don't any of those things. But they're there.
Midian's there.
Midian's
are offspring of Abraham.
So these boys that are born to Abraham, we just kind of leave them off to the side. Are they Jews? Why not? But the rabbis say Abraham was the first Jew.
He was actually a Gentile.
And in fact, he was a goy gadol. It says he was a really great goy, a great nation. God was going to make him into a mighty nation, and many nations would come from him. But he, in fact, was not the first Jew. Judah was several generations later. Were these boys even Israelites? No. They weren't descended from Israel, right? They weren't Edomites either. And they weren't even Ishmaelites. I guess we could call them Avrahamites, for lack of a better term. Ivrim, okay. Hebrews. We're going to table that idea for a little bit. Just going to leave it floating in the ether somewhere. What I wanted to mainly talk about today, because I find it interesting, is Hebron, otherwise known as Hebron or Kiryat Arba. Yes? What do we know about this city?
It's where Adam and Eve were supposedly married.
I mean, supposedly by who? Who are you? Who? You have traditions, but what do we actually know about the place?
David lived there, right?
Oh,
Is it
did
the
it?
southern kingdom or is it part of the northern?
We're going to get to that discussion in a little bit.
This has a cave where the patriarchs.
Yes. First thing that struck me as being interesting this morning is that it wasn't conquered land per se, it was purchased land. Abraham paid for the title deed to this land. Okay? Very few plots of land in Israel have a transfer of ownership that happened this way. Hebron is one of them, right? So he weighs out how many shekels of silver? 400. That's a lot of silver. It's a nice chunk of change, as it were.
200,000 if you equate it to today's money.
Oh boy, nice bit of cash.
Biden inflation, no way.
Well, here's the thing. You know, some people have suggested that Ephron the Hittite was ripping him off. However, when you're talking about not buying land like we do here, where, well, I'm going to buy it, but it really doesn't really belong to me. I can get taxed off of it and so on and so forth. As opposed to an eternal possession from someone, right? That's actually a pretty good deal. Imagine if all you had to spend was, say, $200,000, the land was yours forever, right?
And the trees.
And the trees. And the trees.
Mineral rights.
Mineral rights and Eitz rights. Eitz being trees, sorry. Anyway, okay, so Hebron, one of the only pieces of land that was purchased. Do we know of any others in Scripture?
The threshing. David purchases the threshing floor, which the Temple Mount is built on.
David purchases the threshing floor from Aravna the Jebusite, right? He's the king. He's fought against Jerusalem. He's done all these things. And he goes and he purchases this particular plot of land. He buys it with silver or gold. I don't really remember off the top of my head. So he purchases this land. Do we know of any others?
What about the one word, Judas Stone?
Okay. Chechel Dama. I just had sugar. I've been on the carnivore diet, but I had some vegans over last night, so I've suspended my stuff for the 24 hours, and I'm gonna feel terrible. But since I did, I had a nice piece of dessert too, actually. So anyway, yes, field of blood. There's that. But Israel, they already own the land, right? They're already in Israel. I'm talking about buying it from others, when the Israelites are buying it outright. We have also, and that one does tie in a little bit, it's interesting. We have also the land in Shechem that Jacob purchased, right? So when he went to go deal with the Shechemites, he purchased this bit of land. So Hebron is one of the few title deeded, bought from the nations pieces of land purchased by the patriarchs of Israel. What else do we know about Hebron? Okay, so he meta, she died, right? She's dead. Interesting, yes. But as a city, is it, let's go to Joshua 21 through 22.
What was that? Genesis what?
Joshua.
Joshua.
Any volunteers? All right, I'll read it then. For they gave them Shechem with its common land in the mountains of Ephraim, a city of refuge for the slayer, Gezer with its common land, Kibzaim with its common land, and Beth Horon with its common land, and 4 cities. Oh wait, I'm reading from the Shechem side. Where am I supposed to be? No, I should be in there. Gezer, common land, Beth Horon, common land, 4 cities. And from the tribe of Dan, El Teke and its common land, Gibbethon, its common land, Aijalon, its common land, Gath Rimmon, its common land, 4 cities from the tribe. Where is it? It's in there somewhere. What's that? 11. Okay, so I wrote it down wrong. 21:11. Where are we at? I've written down the verse incorrectly because I was looking at Shechem and Hebron at the same time.
21:11.
Okay.
Thus they gave them Kiryat Arba named the father of Anak, that is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, which is surrounding pastoral lands. The fields of the city and its villages they gave to Caleb, the son of Yefuneh, as his possession.
Verse 13, that's where it is. Thus to the children of Aaron the priest they gave Hebron with its common land, a city of refuge for the slayer. Okay? So Hebron was a city of refuge inhabited by priests. And I did this backwards. I was going to say, and what else do we know about Shechem? And I referenced that one instead. So Shechem, also a city of refuge, inhabited by who? Priests. Okay. What else do we have here? Do we know of any other cities that were loaded full of priests at any point in time in Israel's history? Why? Because that's where the temple was. So you have Jerusalem, and you have the temple. There are going to be priests everywhere. Okay. What else do we know about Hebron? If I don't do my verses incorrectly. It was given to Caleb. Yes, it was. Genesis 13:18. Then Abraham moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord.
Wow.
What else do we know about Shechem? Let's see. Genesis 12, 6 and 7. Abraham passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh. And the Canaanites were then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." And there he built an altar to the Lord. Do we know anything about Jerusalem?
What was that verse?
That's 12, 6, 7. Yeah, 6 and 7.
Well, you have the priest Melchizedek. It comes from 7. Is that the same one that you're? I'm not sure if I'm crossing because the names are different, but Salem and Jerusalem, right?
It is.
Okay.
Did anyone ever build an altar there to the Lord? In Jerusalem? Yes.
David.
Right, David did. Okay. So, what else do we know about Hebron? Let's go to 2 Samuel 5, verse 3. Therefore all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. So what else do we know about Shechem? Let's go to 1 Kings 12. I'm going to do the short version, so we could read the whole chapter. It's all relevant. Verses 1, 16, and 25. Verse 1. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to make him king. Verse 16. Now when all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, "What share have we in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Yishai. To your tents, O Israel, now see to your own house, O David." What do we know about Jerusalem? Jerusalem also, and I forgot to write the verse down, has to do with kingship, and I think it was Shlomo was anointed there. But I'd have to look it up again. So we have these 3 interesting cities, all of which have been purchased from the nations, all of which have to do with there being an altar built there to the Most High, all that have to do with the kingdom in some way or another, sovereignty. In fact, even when we have the prophecy about how the one who will come and his authority will be on his shoulders, does anybody know what that Hebrew word is? The Hebrew word for shoulder is Shechem. It'll be on his Shechem, Shechmo, right?
Shechemites are much big shoulder people,
You know?
huh?
So we have all of these same characteristics shared between Hebron, Shechem, and Yerushalayim. But is Yerushalayim ever considered or ever called in Scripture a city of refuge?
David flees and goes to the north, right?
But is it appointed as a city of refuge?
Yes.
Ah,
What'd you say?
prophetically, yes. To my mind, there is an established pattern here of what the Almighty is showing. But there's kind of a question left with Jerusalem. Is this a city of refuge? It should be obvious, right? We're seeing all these other things. It's the same thing with Hebron. It's the same thing with Shechem. Wait, what's with Jerusalem? And yet, what do we have in Jerusalem? All the exact same circumstances. Now, what happens in a city of refuge? Why do you go to a city of refuge? What do you? Yeah, but why?
Manslaughter.
Manslayer. And if you haven't ever listened to Brian Regan, his bit on manslaughter is actually fun to watch. He really hams it up quite nicely. It's fun. So yeah, adds a little bacon bits. He hams it up, right? How does he say? I slaughtered a man. It sounds really horrible that way. But why do you go to a city of refuge? You go to a city of refuge because you have unintentionally killed someone. Be it negligence, right? You made a mistake, and now somebody's blood is on your head. You weren't trying to kill them, but you accidentally killed them. And how long do you have to stay at this city of refuge?
Until the death of the high priest.
Until the death of the high priest. So then you ask yourself about some of the things written in the apostolic writings about what Yeshua did for us in this place called Yerushalayim. One of our friends who doesn't attend here currently, Nathan and I were talking about how this law changes at the death of the high priest. How does the law change? The law that kept you bound. Well, why are you bound under the law until the death of the high priest if you've accidentally killed someone? Right? Well, who here has accidentally killed someone? Then there's a hand that went up and back and came back down real fast,
Does that include a fish?
Right? What is the wages of sin? Whose?
Yeshua.
Were you trying to kill yourself? When you stole that candy bar, when you broke the Shabbat that day?
Wow.
So who did you accidentally kill?
Wow.
So the law keeps you in place until the death of the high priest. And then you are able to go free. If these things happen at Hebron, and these things happen at Shechem, shouldn't they happen in Yerushalayim as well? Well, what if they did? What if that's the mystery that we're actually supposed to be looking towards?
If the Son sets you free, you're free indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. So that's the main thing that I wanted to discuss today. Any thoughts on that? Because I have some side thoughts, some side rabbit trails that I wanted to run down. But I wanted to discuss Hebron, Shechem, and Yerushalayim, and how they function, and how there seems to be a pattern there, at least to my brain. And this is, again, my commentary. Cain is turning quickly,
Well, I'm thinking about the prophecy that there's come up a lot lately concerning Jerusalem. And it's in Zechariah chapter 14. Zechariah 14, 1 through 3. Behold, the day is coming, for Yahweh will be the spoil will be taken from you, will be divided among you. For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city will be captured, and the house is plundered, will be ravished, half the city exiled. But the rest of the people will not be cut off from the city. There is, and I might be thinking of a different passage, but it talks about how, is it 12? It is 12, that's right. It talks about how Jerusalem will become a cup of trembling for all the nations. What do we read now?
End of the day, I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves shall be cut off in pieces through all people of the earth be gathered together against it.
I'm trying to put together all the pieces here, but if Jerusalem is the place where people are going to flee to who need refuge in the last days because they recognize that their sins have slaughtered indirectly him, then the war against Jerusalem is a direct assault on the process of redemption that he's made.
Indeed. And this is the other similarity that I didn't yet mention because it's one of the side thoughts. Each one of these bits of land has been contested and remains so. Jerusalem, everybody okay with letting the Jews keep it?
No.
Yeah. Everybody here.
Everybody here, you know.
Besides,
What about Hebron? Right? There is a mosque / church / synagogue built supposedly on this particular plot of land that purports to be the tomb of the patriarchs. Now, I don't know about y'all, but my reading of Torah tells me we're not supposed to be worshiping in graveyards. Okay, just putting that out there, right? But it has been fought over. The Muslims have laid claim. No, Abraham's our father. This is about our faith. The Christians have laid claim. Yeah. Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. Wait, not the Jew. We can't admit that. Right? Yeah, so they fought over it. And you can actually see the different layers of structure if you ever go into the building. Like what they've got, different periods of building. And the Jewish people have also fought over this particular bit of land. Shechem today is strongly in what is known as the West Bank. I don't call it that. You know, it's in Samaria, Shomron, right? In that region, Northern Kingdom Israel. Woo-hoo. Anyway, long story short, these are also hotly contested. They're the only ones we ever bought. You know? They're the only ones purchased. All the rest of it was taken, by force, if you will. When we went to conquering the land and all that jazz. But these were legitimately purchased, right? And they are severely hotly contested bits of real estate. Why? I have an interesting thought about some of this, and it's one of the side thoughts. But David, which one did he purchase? Jerusalem. Is David Jewish?
Yes.
Or is he only Jewish?
No.
He's
Jewish.
Jewish. He's a Jewish king. Yehuda, right? Okay, he's a Jew. David, Hamelech, Hu Yahud, right? He's Jewish. Okay. Yehudi. Anyway. What about who bought Shechem? Yaakov, Jacob. Is he a Jew? He wasn't a Jew. He is Israel, right? Yaakov is Israel. He is a Hebrew, yes, but he's not just a Jew. Okay? Abraham, on the other hand, was he a Jew? Was he an Israelite? No, and no. He's the father of many nations, not just the Israelites, not just the Ishmaelites, but in fact, there are other sons mentioned, and we don't even know who they are. Maybe they went as far as Japan and China. I don't know, right? I have heard that the ancient pictograph from China for salvation is a lamb slain over me. So, I don't know.
There's a Chinese picture also for the picture for West, which is two people living in a garden.
And what was it? The flood? 7 people in a boat?
7 people.
So, fundamentally, I don't know where all of Abraham's sons are. But he purchased land, Abraham purchased land, that is to be a city of refuge. And he's the father of many nations. And you have a man named Yaakov, Israel, who purchased a land that is also supposed to be a place of refuge. And he is Israel. And then it seems like this focus narrows to a point. And then you have David, king in Judah, who goes to purchase a land and fills it full of Levites. And sacrifices are made there. And there's supposed to be Yom Kippur and the redemption of the people and all these things happening where? Specifically in Jerusalem. Now, fundamentally, I find it very interesting that Rehavam, he doesn't go and have himself made king in Jerusalem. Israel doesn't go to make him king in Jerusalem. They go where Israel purchased the land, and they try to make him king there. And when he doesn't listen to Israel, they say, go take care of your own house. Right? They bring him to the place that Israel purchased, not David, to make him king over all Israel. And only when he rejected his people did they reject him and send him away from that place. Right? I find this interesting. I also find interesting the proximity between Hebron and Jerusalem. No, sorry, not Jerusalem. Bethlehem. We've been talking this time about how each of these cities of refuge has a connection with the royalty, right? Kingship. They made kings in all these various places. Why would it be important for the kings to be very close to the priests? I mean, besides, these people are all steeped in studying the Torah. Like you have this guy, I'm king, everybody, I can do whatever I want.
So the kings could stay, you know what I'm trying to say? So that they would have a plumb line for righteousness, so that they wouldn't go off and do their own thing.
Exactly. So the kings would know the Torah. So they would be around people who are studying the word of the Almighty day in and day out and day in and day out. And if you're a king and you're how long did David reign? Where did he reign first? Hebron.
Yeah, that's right.
He did not reign first in Jerusalem. So he is in a city of refuge. He is reigning in a city loaded with priests. He's learning how they study. He's learning what they study. He's having these discussions with his neighbors about the Torah, about the law of God, day in and day out. He is with these people. But who is he also seeing? Who has to show up against their will from time to time? What's the city of refuge for? Manslayers. So if you're the king, you've got all the power, you've got all the authority in your own head, whatever the case may be, and you regularly have to say, hey, why did Shmuel come to the city today? Right? I know I'm always picking on Shmuel. If Shmuel the prophet ever is like, listen, man, my body drops and I go to the father, and Shmuel's like, no, I need to talk to him first. We got to have some words here, right? So you seeing these manslayers come. Why are they there? Because they killed someone through negligence, maybe, an accident. They made a mistake, and somebody else's blood is on their head. If you're a leader in Israel and you are confronted with that reality on a daily basis, do you think it would give you a lot more perspective than if you're just sitting in some capital somewhere, separated from that truth, and you're making decisions for a people and a nation, and not seeing the real world consequences of what you have set up for those people? If you make a mistake and you kill someone unintentionally, does that law not apply to the king of Israel? Does that reality not apply to anyone who's in leadership in our people? But if you're there and you're seeing these people day in and day out, and you're learning the Torah day in and day out, do you think that might actually be a better environment to raise up righteous leaders and rulers in our midst?
Of course.
I think so.
Kind of crumbles the ivory tower.
It crumbles the ivory tower. Good thought. I agree with it, 100%. Rachel.
So I just had a question. So what does the Torah say? So when the high priest dies, then you're set free. Meaning you're free to go back.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're allowed to return home, carry on life as usual. If you've got to manslayer someone, do it when the high priest is already 97, right? Not when he's 23 and sprightly. If you're sitting there, and you're there for 95 years, you're waiting, but this guy, he's got one of those 120-year promises, and you're sitting there with the Levites. I just want to go home, man. and then this other manslayer comes on a Thursday, and the high priest ends up dying on the Friday. Like, how is that even fair? I've thought about these things. I've asked myself, you'd probably be like, what's that about? Why couldn't you have let him manslay the guy a couple days later, and then he'd have to deal with what I had to deal with? My brain likes to explore the possibilities. But fundamentally, what's that?
Does it count if you feed the priest pork chops?
Oh my! Let's not do that. I don't think I'd want the judgment.
There would be repercussions.
Indeed. So more or less, that's what I wanted to discuss today. The proximity of the royalty with this city of refuge concept, these particular pieces of land that have been purchased, that have been fought over, where altars were built, where there's this association with the kingship, where there's a very strong priestly presence. There's always that connection. What did the Almighty say He had made us into a nation of? Kings and priests.
Royal priesthood.
A royal priesthood. And you see this connection between these batches of people just moving on. And in fact, we have evidence in the apostolic writings that this close proximity between these two peoples continued on. Can anybody guess what I'm referring to?
Oh.
Melchizedek.
Not there.
Are you thinking about the dynasty out of England?
No.
No?
The divine right of kings.
Well-
No, I'm not talking about the dynasty out of England. I'm talking about who was Yeshua's cousin and who was he? He's a priest, right? And a Levite. And his father was serving in the temple when he saw the messenger, and he wasn't able to speak for a while and all those things. So how are they cousins? Because Judah and Levi were intermarrying in Yeshua's day.
Well, Judah. Levi didn't have a plot of its own land. They were scattered throughout both northern and southern houses. And so you have, in the south, you have Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin. You have Judah, and there's a whole lot in the Torah which we're about to get to about the relationship between Judah saying, hey, Benjamin, he's going to become like one of my sons, right? There's that whole dynamic of Judah and Benjamin in coming together. And in the middle of them is Levi, right? The northern house, Levites are in the diaspora, so we know this from the northern house getting scattered abroad. But Matthew, maybe you can help me clarify something, because I'm trying to understand the kings, and nothing you said I have a question about, but I'm trying to put together some pieces here, because the kings are, on some small level, they're the state. They are the...
I think one of the French kings actually said as much.
They
am
are the
state.
administrators of the state,
Hmm.
right? I mean, we like to think that democracy's the cat's meow, but
Down.
each man doing what is right in his own eyes never pays a place for it.
Amen.
So when we're talking about kingship being related to the state, and then we talk about the priesthood being related to the church, because there's definitely an overlap there. I'm thinking about this in terms of how many ways in our society the state has taken over almost to the point where, I mean, I don't know, I'm trying to connect the dots here between these two about the priesthood. So are we somehow, we're what? We're inhabitants of both?
What do you mean by inhabitants of both?
Well, are officers of both? I'm trying to think of the way because, all right, so we're a nation of, we're a royal priesthood, right? So we're king priests.
Yes. Da 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 da.
Right.
Sounds epic. Okay. I'm with you.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, okay, so how does that work if you have us as, I can't quite get my thoughts into alignment to ask the question correctly, but how does that work with when we are simultaneously members of the church, we're this group of people, but we're also officers of the state? How does that work in terms of us like giving ourselves away to a secular statehood? Are we making proverbial deals with the devil in terms of how we're interacting with the state? I guess it's really the underlying question that I'm trying to get to. Because
I'm going to answer that multiple ways. I'm going to say, yes, functionally, a lot of the times we are making deals with the devil, but not that we necessarily should.
right.
Render unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar, and unto God that which belongs to God. Right? As people who are dealing with the questions of, say, separation of church and state. Separation of church and state is an interesting idea, right? But in this country, separation has meant supremacy of state over church. They were trying to prevent supremacy of church over state, but in fact they have created the reverse when they specified separation of these two things, like the separation of powers.
Right.
If you're talking separation of powers, does the presidency have supremacy over the Supreme Court?
No.
Is the Supreme Court supposed to be subservient to, say, Congress?
No.
Or, the legislature, right? What is supposed to be happening here? They're supposed to be separated, and they're supposed to not be able to dominate one another and seize all control in the society. And yet, when it comes to separation of church and state, we throw that concept right out the window and assume that the church must be subservient to the state. In fact, what Yeshua said was we're supposed to give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. Daniel's 3 friends, what were their names? Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. Right? I know everyone wants to tell me Shadrach, whatever. Your shack, my shack, and the Winnebago. Right? I heard that once from a Christian friend. I thought that was great. Those are their exile names, right? Anyway, I get feisty about it. So you have Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. Daniel's 3 friends. Did they serve in a pagan nation?
Yes.
Did they serve well?
Yes.
Did they serve so well that their reputation was beyond all their peers?
Yes.
But did they bow to the idols?
No.
As believers, a royal priestly nation, and as Messianics, I've suggested we need to be better Christians than the Christians and better Jews than the Jews.
Amen.
Right? When we go into a workplace, when we set our hand to do something, whatever you set your hand to do it with all your might, do it as though you are serving the Most High. But don't bow to the idols. Don't give yourself to the paganism of the system. I think that's where you have the fundamental separation of church and state. In my home, right? if I'm trying to enforce the thou shalt not eatest bacon. I know it's not said that way, but the basic, no pork, right? Pigs are unclean. I will enforce that. I also try to keep the speed limit. It drives some of my friends crazy. Like, why are you driving so slow? Is there any Torah violation that comes of me keeping the speed limit? Assuming I don't have somebody bleeding to death in my car, that I actually should be rushing to the hospital, right? If it's just an average day, I'm going about my day, is there a Torah violation in me keeping the speed limit?
Lost the one, really.
Is the symbol on the speed limit sign an ancient symbol for a Canaanite deity, and if I obey it, now I'm bowing to an idol? No, that's ridiculous. So in my appropriation of these things, what I understand is I will insist on not allowing bacon and things into my home, and I will try to things like following the speed limit and honoring what I should honor as an American and a law-abiding citizen in this society. I was actually having a discussion about this the other day, and I'd like to pose a thought to you all. Chip, we're talking about my old boss. He was a bit of a scoundrel in many ways. He was an interesting scoundrel. I remember when I first showed up at Pegasus, and we had a whole bunch of construction debris in the back of one of the trucks, and he's like, okay, he's in this community of condominiums. Okay, a few minutes. Community of condominiums, and they got this huge dumpster, and he's like, okay, so we're going to dump all that stuff into the dumpster. And I'm thinking, surely there's got to be some sort of HOA rules against a construction company dumping in the community dumpster. And he shook his head, smiled at me, and said, I'm the president of the HOA. Okay, so he was a scoundrel, right?
Once, actually.
He was a bit of a scoundrel, and I was just like, I see what you did there. I'm not sure that's the spirit of the law as such, but right, there you go. So, but my manner and approach with him, whenever he would tell me to do something, even when it seemed ridiculous, and sometimes it did seem ridiculous, I would try to say, yes, sir, and do it. Yes, sir, and do it. Yes, sir, and do it. And he learned a lesson on that one once, but I'm not going to go into that story today.
Tell him, that one's good.
All right, fine. I've been compelled by the authority in the community so I must under Cain that which belongs to Cain. No. So the one day he says to me, Matthew, and I think he was just trying to see the extremity of my yes sir and do it, right? Matthew, I suddenly need to use the restroom real bad, but I'm busy, so I don't have time. Would you mind going to use the restroom for me? Right? Now, as it happened, I also needed to use the restroom. I'm thinking, if he's going to be stuck in there a while, so I said, yes, sir. And I got up and I went right to the restroom. I got back out, and he looked at me like, I can't believe you just did that. So, constantly, yes, sir, yes, sir. And the one day he told me to sign the company Christmas card. And I said, sir, I can't do that. Now, he really didn't like that response. I don't think he was expecting it, I don't know if he just thought I couldn't say no to things, right? I don't know if he didn't realize that at times I can be a buffalo settling in the road. But he told me to do something that isn't within his purview. That's the thing that I render unto God. I'm not going to put my name to a card that is associated historically with pagan things. I said, no, sir, I can't do that. And I brought this up in a discussion with people recently because they were talking about this very thing, about how do we balance that we're living in this secular society. And I said, fundamentally, if I always said, no, I ain't doing that, would there have been any significance to me saying, no, I won't sign that card? No, I won't put my name to that message. But if he finds me in every instance, working with him, cooperating, following the speed limit, trying to do what is right according to society, in every instance, and then suddenly, when he tells me to do something that goes contrary to the convictions of my faith, like Daniel's friends, I try to respectfully, no, I will not do that. Suddenly there's a juxtaposition. And it begs the question, why? Why is he yes, 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 and all these things, and no in that? If I were just a contrarian person, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, there would be no significance in his eyes for me saying no because of conviction this time. It's not just because I'm, a rebellious, whatever. It's because there's something important here. It's important to me. And you're going to see me hallow his name by saying, I will stand with him on something because this is not something you can tell me to do. I think it is important for us, especially to be upstanding members of society for that reason, insofar as it doesn't contradict the convictions of our faith. Because when people see us doing what's right in the eyes of society, when it is actually not, again, contrary to the convictions of our faith, and then stopping and saying, no, I can't do that. Those that are going to be like, but I know you. You're always, cooperative. You're always easy to get along with. You're always all these things. Why is this such a big deal? Well, let me tell you about it. Then you have an opportunity, right? So I know I kind of waxed along on that response to your thing. I don't know if it exactly answered your question. Fair enough.
You say, when you say render to Caesar that which is Caesar, render to God that which is God, but he also meant that everything's God's. So what we are to do is to submit to a righteous government and a righteous rule, a godly rule, not just do anything. Like if Biden told me to do something, number one, I'd probably assume it's not righteous right now. But it would have to discern it, right? I'd have to make sure it's a righteous thing he's asking me to do. Same with, do I want to look at Nero and Tammuz and sign this card? No, I don't. But that's not righteous for him to ask because it is out of his virgin. So it's a double-edged sword with that comment that he made, which is why they would want to refer to it.
Oh, it has more than 2 edges.
Oh, it's got a lot of
so more. Okay. If I can go to back off that really briefly, because yes, you must always be able to, you got to know his word. You got to know his word. Caesar and God will have different ideas as to what belongs to them.
Yes.
Go with God's definition. He is the higher authority in all matters, yes? But okay, how did Yeshua start that conversation? He said, give me a what? A denarius. And so he says, hand me the coin, the temple tax, the tax, whatever it is. And what does he say? Whose image is on this? Therefore, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. Well, here's the next question. If Caesar put his image on a coin, where did God put his image? On each and every one of us. Let us make man in our image. In the image of God, he created man. Male and female, he created them. If Caesar puts his image on the worthless metal, God put his image on you. If the coin belongs to Caesar, what belongs to God? You. Right?
Wow.
So just a thought. And I know I'm a little over at this point, so thank you so much. Let's go ahead and close in prayer, and then yes, we can talk later because I love this stuff. Anyway.